Hi, welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Diane, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder, and today is brought to you by Earth Mama Organics. Earth Mama's safe, effective, and trusted formulations range from certified organic herbal teas, like the best-selling organic Milkmaid tea, Castile soaps, balms, lotions, and more, and we will hear more about them later. But today's episode is also brought to you by Kindred Bravely. Kindred Bravely is an awesome mom-run company devoted to creating maternity and nursing clothes that are comfortable, beautiful, and useful. And I know you're all going to want to hear about those things later. Our sponsors are awesome and handpicked for you guys. So
Yes.
These are not just random things.
No.
But right now, Diane has our review of the week.
Yeah, I do. And it is from... Where is she? Because I was worried about saying it wrong. So this is from Lidstees. I'm sure I'm butchering that. But this says that we are the best podcast. I'm a second-time mom who is not able to breastfeed with my first past 4 months. I love this podcast, and thanks to it, I've made a year with my second. We had so many hurdles to start. At just 4 weeks, my son's pediatrician told me that my milk wasn't fatty enough. He wasn't gaining weight. He would let me continue to nurse for 1 week, but that if my son didn't gain at least a pound, then I'd have to start him on formula. He also told me that after our next visit, he wanted me to start sleep training my son, that he's underweight. As soon as I got out of the office, I made an appointment with an IBCLC. The appointment, she told me that we were doing awesome, not to start formula, and faxed her notes to the peds. She wanted nothing to do with the pediatrician at that point and canceled the next appointment and was done. I'm beyond thankful for your podcast that arms us moms with what we need to fight back against people like this pediatrician. I feel so much more confident going into my pediatrician's office now, and thank you for all you do.
That's awesome. I mean, I hate the fact that everyone now, it's kind of like every mom for themselves. You know, I feel like the country is like that right now. Well, maybe it has always been, and it's just being exposed a lot right now.
Yeah.
But like, you know, it's like you're kind of just on your own and you're having to like just fight for yourself. And it shouldn't be that way. You know, it should be a community. It should be all of us working together on every aspect of what's happening right now.
Right.
You know, from everything. So it's really heartbreaking that people are having to go through this. But, you know, thank God she was able to
Find her.
Just recognize that this is like not that person wasn't helping her.
It's crazy. So thank you so much for reaching out. We love to read all the reviews that we get and the emails. So send it to us. Put them on iTunes if you can. You can send us an email, badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com. You can get there from our website, Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. And definitely check out our website. We got a lot of cool stuff on there. And we got a good episode for you today. This actually came off of a suggestion from a longtime listener who suggested, can you do a podcast on sleeping babies? Or it's not sleeping babies, sleepy babies. And what do you do with those sleepy babies?
Yes, that's a thing, you know, because they're so sleepy. They come out so sleepy, and then it's like you're supposed to be feeding them. You know, they're supposed to be nursing all the time, but then maybe they're latched on and they're just like not doing anything. Yeah. They're just sleeping there, and you're like, oh my God, are they eating? Are they getting enough? Oh my God.
What's happening? Yes. So, but one of the things I want to make sure, like, you all know is that this is normal. Like, babies are sleepy. So let's talk about, like, what makes a baby sleepy, right? Birth. How about that? That makes a baby sleepy.
Doesn't that make you sleepy?
Oh my God. Everybody should be sleeping after. Like,
yes.
It's really hard to be born. Just like it's really hard to have them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hardest person that birth is on is the baby, even though we don't want to think about that. Really, it's the birthing parent. I mean, is so hard on the birthing parent. But we don't think about it being hard on the baby because they're just like come out like this lump, you know, and they're not like, oh my God, that was really hard. But like, it's really, really, they're just floating in this like beautiful, nice, warm liquid for 9 months. And then suddenly, oh my God.
Here they are.
Here, suddenly they're here in this world.
And it's very overstimulating here for them. And sometimes they just shut down and go to sleep. But sleeping is very normal for them. We know that babies sleep a lot, right? We know that. you know, sometimes it's smaller increments, but we know that they sleep a lot. This is really, really normal. But when you have your like infant, say hospital, you just had your baby, you're in the hospital, or you're the first couple weeks, your baby is really sleepy. One of the other things that impacts how much they sleep is the medication that you might have had during labor and delivery. If you chose to have medications during labor and delivery, or if you had a C-section and they gave you medications for that, that can make babies really sleepy. Or if you're taking medication after you had the baby, like pain medication, heavy duty pain medication, if you had a C-section, that can make the baby sleepy. And nobody's saying like, don't take those things or don't do those things.
Safe.
Yeah, it's perfectly safe, or they wouldn't give it to you. But it can make the baby a little bit more sleepy. So that is just something to like be aware of. No, okay, the baby's sleepy. This is probably why. Not that there's something wrong with them. It's just a part of the process.
I just want to backtrack for a second. When I say it's safe, I mean like whatever situation you're in, it's safe to continue breastfeeding and everybody's okay. Obviously, there are risks and interventions, and we have an episode on that. So I don't mean like it's safe. It's just like it's totally safe. Everything's fine. Let doctors do whatever they want to you. Like that's not what I mean. I mean, it's a more complicated situation than that. But I mean, whatever after birth, whatever situation you're in, you're totally safe to continue breastfeeding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But medications will definitely, you know, like an epidural, things like that are very typical at birth, those will make your baby sleepier. So that is normal. Your baby's going to be sleepy anyway, but then if you're going to, you know, if there's medications added to the mix, then that might make your baby a little bit more sleepy. But this is really normal stuff. And I feel like I hear from moms all the time that tell me, well, at the hospital, they said the baby was really, really sleepy. I had a mom the other day that said, oh, well, they said the baby was really sleepy because he wasn't feeding well. No, he's really sleepy because he's really sleepy. That's why. That has nothing to do with like he came out and you're not feeding him well, so he's just going to take a nap instead. Like that is not what's going on. Babies are sleepy. They are sleepy. So that is really normal. We have to try a little bit harder to wake them up. And it is important to be aware that you do have to wake them for feeds. Like, don't think that at the age of a day, they're going to go, oh, it's time for me to eat, because they have no idea that it's time for them to eat.
Okay. And so that's a good, like, so what do you do? Like, if they're sleeping, it's not just like waking up, you know, your partner, like banging a pot next to their head. Like, get up, get up, jerk. You've been sleeping too long. Like, how do you wake up a baby that just like won't wake up?
So changing their diaper is I feel like is one of the best things, obviously, you know, changing their diaper, undressing them. And I know a lot of times people are like, oh, do I have to undress the baby every time? If they're super sleepy and you're just home anyway, then undress them, you know, change a diaper, dress them down to their diaper. That is really helpful to kind of get them awake. If you're out, I know not a lot of people are probably going out right now, but if you're like, say at your family's house or something like that, you don't have to undress your baby. Like, you don't have to undress your baby everywhere you go to feed them. But in the beginning, those first few days, it can be pretty helpful to just undress them, strip them down, change a diaper. I like to sit them up and like rub their back, because that kind of gets their circulation going a little bit. When you have them on the breast, if they doze off, so it's like Abby was saying, you know, we put them there and sometimes you're not sure, like, are they doing anything or are they just kind of like sleeping? Like, what's happening? Breast compressions, where you're like holding the breast and you're massaging the breast, or that's something your partner can help you do. Your partner can massage the breast for you while the baby's there. That will push milk down to the baby, and that actually that's my favorite way to keep a baby awake, because it just like, they're like, oh yeah, this is what I need to do. And
it's just a reflex.
Yeah. And they start, you know, suckling and swallowing, and that really helps to keep them efficient. Or just keep moving them. Like, if your baby, you do not have to keep your baby on the breast for 15 minutes. Like, that's a whole different podcast. But
okay. So how often are we waking up the baby? How often and how long? Like you were just about to say.
Yeah. So we want to wake the baby, like, how often for feeds?
Yeah.
The hospital is going to tell you like every 2 to 3 hours, because in the hospital, that's where they're really sleepy. You know, the first couple of days of their life, they're like, bonk, they're out. So every like 2 to 3 hours in the hospital, you're probably going to be waking your baby up. Once you go home, your milk starts coming in, your baby might be a little bit more awake. Like, they might be still not much awake, but they might be starting to stir a little bit more to eat around an hour and a half 2 hours, maybe not that 3 hour mark. And that really throws people off because people are like, but wait, the baby was eating every 3 hours in the hospital. That's what they told me to do. Wake the baby every 3 hours in the hospital. Now my baby wants to eat every hour and a half to 2 hours. Are they not getting enough? No, that's normal. That 2 hour thing is normal. That 3 hour thing is just something the hospital does. That's their thing. It's normal that your baby might want to feed every hour and a half, every 2 hours. That's pretty normal. If they're not awake to eat by 3 hours as a newborn, probably the first week, first 2 weeks, I would say wake them up to eat. If it has been longer than like 3 hours.
Okay. And then, so you were already about to say this, but so you're waking them up every, I don't even remember what you just said this right very second. 1.5 to 2 hours.
If they're not waking on their own, then wake them no longer than 3 hours.
Don't let more than 3 hours go by.
During the day. Okay. Nighttime, maybe like 4-ish. And that's the first like 2 weeks.
Okay, I was going to say. So the very, very first beginning part.
Very first beginning. When your baby is super sleepy and they're not waking. Your baby doesn't know what hunger, like they don't know. Right. They don't know like, okay, I feel hungry right now. Like they don't really know that. So the very beginning, when we're always like feed on demand, like that's ultimately our goal. But sometimes in the beginning, babies don't know what that feels like. And they're too sleepy to wake up for it. So you have to kind of like help them along and make sure that they are eating. Or else they're going to miss feeds, and we don't want them to do that. After a couple weeks, then they start kind of waking on their own to eat too. And then you don't have to really worry about it anymore. But in the very beginning, you do have to wake them because they just don't know.
And so when you're doing the breast compressions, that's the best way to do it is like put them on the breast, whatever, and compress.
Put them on the
breast. Or change their
compress.
diaper. That's whatever the ways to get them. How long are you trying to keep them awake?
So your baby might get into like a phase of good sucks and swallows and then start dozing. So you want to stimulate them. So like take them off, try to burp them, maybe change a diaper in between. If they, had a wet diaper or something in between, that'll help to wake them up again. Put them on, move them to the other side. Like it's sometimes people say, well, they told me, my pediatrician's office told me to keep the baby on for 15 minutes per side. So then they have a baby sitting there for 15 minutes sleeping before they'll move them. And it's like, no, if they're sucking and swallowing for 3 minutes and then fall asleep, take them off, move them, wake them up, or take them off, wake them up, put them back on the same side. We need to re-stimulate them to keep them going. And then if you get to the point where your baby is not doing any sucks and swallows anymore, and then but you can stimulate them to do that, then great. Keep stimulating, moving them, rubbing their hands, rubbing their feet, stroking their cheek, doing the breast compressions. Once they're not responding to that, then you can go, okay, they're done. They're done. They're just like, and they're floppy, like when you raise their hand up and they're just like, wah, they're floppy. Like that's when we know, okay, they're done. You're not going to get anything else out of this baby. But that is usually, I really have that talk with parents in the beginning when they say, well, I need to keep them on. I was told to keep them on 15 minutes. I would rather have a baby on for 5 minutes and feeding well than 15 minutes and doing nothing. So move them. Like I remember I worked with a lactation consultant who was like, no parking, move them, keep them going. Because if you let them sit there cozy against you, they are just going to go to sleep, and we want the baby to eat. Yeah. So,
but you're not like it's not, you don't have to because it seems like a lot of work and I don't want people to worry. You're not doing this all day.
Oh, no.
You're just trying to keep them awake for a few minutes so they get that good suck and swallow.
Exactly.
And that's the other thing is does everybody know the difference between the suckle of them just hanging there and not eating and the suckle of them actually swallowing? Because I didn't know until I learned.
Yeah, and that's something that I usually try to talk to them about. I definitely show them when I'm doing a consult with them and talk about it with them. And I try to talk about it if I do, prenatal classes. And even when I worked at the hospital, I tried to make sure that I showed them mom, this is what the swallow looks like. Because that's really, really important. Because your baby, sometimes that suckle, and it feels more shallow, if it's just the suckling, the non-nutritive suck, it can feel a little bit more shallow. If they're feeding, you really feel those good deep sucks. They're very rhythmic. The other ones can be very, they're just kind of suckling. And that's when we know, okay, they're not eating. If your baby is not swallowing after every suck or every 2 sucks, then they're probably not eating efficiently. So if they go, like, you put them on, they're doing suck, swallow, and they do that for a good couple of minutes, and then they get into this, and then occasional swallow, and then a little bit of a suck, and then an occasional swallow. Like, that's not really eating. So in the beginning, you know, you can, like, stimulate them to kind of get them going again. This is not even something that you're going to be doing for your whole breastfeeding relationship. This is really just the beginning. Like, this is just the beginning of your breastfeeding relationship. So, like, when you were saying, like, this is a lot of work, it is. It's not all day, and it's not forever. Like, they get to be very efficient once they're a little bit more awake and alert and they know what's going on. But in the beginning, we need to help them. Like, they're babies. They don't know what they're doing. We need to help them. You need to wake them up and get them to feed and make sure that they're awake for the feed.
Yeah, and we can put, like, links or, like, little videos on badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com.
Oh, we can.
Of, like, the difference between them not eating and them eating. Because even if you're past that and you've never seen one of those videos, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because you can tell the difference.
So let's hear from our cool new sponsors.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll talk more about why babies are sleepy too after.
Cool. All right. Today's episode is brought to you by Earth Mama Organics. At Earth Mama, we recognize that becoming a mother is the beginning of a series of profound changes. Often it changes the way we see the world because we're looking through a new lens. And that can lead to a big question about what we put on our bodies and in our bodies. Which is this safe for my baby? We all ask this question, right? I know, like, I never even thought about it before I had kids. Earth Mama Organics manufactures organic herbal care for the entire incredible journey of breastfeeding, motherhood, nurturing women and their whole families from pregnancy to postpartum recovery to breastfeeding and far beyond. Marrying generations of women's wisdom about traditional herbal solutions with evidence-based research. Earth Mama's safe, effective, and trusted formulations range from certified organic herbal teas, like the best-selling organic Milkmaid tea, which is super yummy, to Castile soaps, balms, lotions, soothing sprays, sunscreens, deodorants, and 2 kinds of non-GMO project-verified nipple cream. Organic nipple butter, which is super popular, and the vegan nipple butter. Experience their botanical-rich products for yourself. Head to earthmama.com, and use code BADASS for 15% off your regularly priced purchases. That does not include the travel kits. U.S. orders only for this promo code, and the offer expires on August 31st. So hurry up, earthmama.com. You probably know this brand, Earth Mama Organics. They're wonderful. They're giving you a promo code, and they're giving you 15% off. So badass. It ends at August 31st. So take advantage of that. Today's episode is also brought to you by Kindred Bravely, an awesome mom-run company devoted to creating maternity and nursing clothes that are comfortable, beautiful, and useful. Like motherhood itself, this company is built on love, a love that is poured into every piece of clothing they bring to life. Since moms deserve to look and feel great at the same time, Kindred Bravely's clothes are meticulously designed to make the motherhood journey easier. From the bump to the breast and beyond. Whether it's their hands-free pumping bra that allows you to pump, nurse, or both at the same time without any wardrobe changes, or their super soft pajamas for late-night nursing and cuddle sessions, Kindred Bravely aims to bring comfort to all moms. Winner of multiple Mom's Choice and What to Expect awards, and the Best of Lucy's list, Kindred Bravely is the answer to your nursing wardrobe needs. See all of their comfy clothing at kindredbravely.com. That is KINDRED, Bravely, BRAVELY.com, and use promo code BFMAMA20, BFMAMA20 for 20% off of your Kindred Bravely order. I mean, take advantage of that too. And everything that I'm saying, I know I'm saying a lot of like .com and all that stuff. Just go to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, and I said another .com. Badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com will have all of this sponsor information, the promo codes, the links, and all of that to hook you up with these deals. And today's Well, you can find at Badass Breastfeeding Podcast, you can also find breastfeeding resources, all of our other episodes, show notes, and information about scheduling your lactation consultation with Diane.
It's me.
And I have today's shout out of the week. And our shout out of the week goes to Birth by Grace Midwifery Services. And they describe themselves as Birth by Grace Midwifery offers respectful, comprehensive midwifery care with a personal touch. Prenatal care, home birth, and postpartum services are provided by a supportive, caring team of certified nurse midwives and credentialed childbirth professionals. Your home birth experience will be an empowering and memorable journey, currently servicing Metro Atlanta and surrounding counties. So home birth, a lot of people are switching to home birth, these days and looking for reputable, midwives to help them through that process. And if you're in the Atlanta area, I highly recommend these people. And you can find them at Birth by Grace on Instagram as well. And their Instagram is beautiful. Aww. With incredible home birth and breastfeeding and all kinds of beautiful photos and information, about home birth and such. So check them out. Birth by Grace on Instagram and birthbygrace.com for their website. And sleepy babies.
Sleepy. So now the one thing I do want to make sure we talk about real quick is jaundice. And we did an episode on jaundice a little while back. So of course we'll link it on the website in the show notes. But that makes a baby very, very sleepy. So jaundice is something you really have to work a little bit harder to get your baby to eat if they've got jaundice, because they just get so sleepy. And most babies do get a little bit of jaundice anyway, but there are certain things that can cause your baby to have jaundice. If they're born a couple weeks early, some babies are more prone to jaundice. It just can happen, that they get jaundice and then they don't feed well, and they have to feed well to get rid of the jaundice. So it kind of becomes this cycle. But you do have to really try and stimulate your baby a lot more when they've got a little bit of jaundice, just to make sure that they're eating well. But the whole point of this conversation is so that moms realize this is normal. Babies are really sleepy. And sometimes they make it sound like, oh my gosh, your baby is so sleepy. There's something wrong with them. And that's not the case. Babies are just really sleepy. This is normal for them. It is not it is not typical for you to get much awake time either. I don't see babies really giving much awake time for the first 3 weeks or so, at least. You'll probably feed your baby and they'll just go back to sleep. And that'll happen for the first, good couple of weeks. And then maybe you'll start getting a little bit of playtime after a feed, but you won't see that for a little while. They're really sleepy. They're going to sleep most of the time.
I remember when I had just had Exley. I mean, when I feel when you have your first, nothing. So even when they're sleeping, you're panicked.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really seem maybe it does seem like they're sleepy, especially if somebody's telling you that they're sleeping too much, if they're telling you that it's unusual when actually it's not. Mm-hmm. But when I had when I had Exley, I already had Jack was almost 3 and he's, active and all of that. I would forget Exley.
Oh, yeah.
Because he would just be out, zonked out. And I'd be running around after Jack. I remember one time I was outside with my neighbors, talking to my neighbors. And I was like, wait a minute. I have a baby.
I know.
I run in and he's in his little, his little thing sleeping. But I was like, oh my God, I forgot about you.
Yeah. I've had moms I've had doctors call me about a baby that wasn't gaining well before. This has happened a few times. And when I saw the mom, she had a couple of other kids and she was like, sometimes I just forget, not forget, but you're running after another kid.
Yeah.
She goes, sometimes I'll take him off sooner. He's probably not done. And he just goes back to sleep. And because I got to go make sure somebody's not burning the house down or whatever.
Right. Yep.
It's hard. That's why always having a sling, always having a wrap, somehow, just kind of bringing your baby around with you or whatever. But it is really normal for them to just be sleepy. And for you to take advantage of that, because I've had some families, if the baby wasn't gaining well, and I've said, well, how does the baby do overnight? Be like, oh, great, they sleep all night. It's no, you have to wake your baby up. to feed them. Like, you can't let them go longer than 3. So now we're missing like 2 feeds, you know, because the baby's sleepy, so they don't wake them up. Or you have those family members who from day 1 home from the hospital say, do not wake a sleeping baby. Let them they'll wake up when they're hungry. In the first 2 weeks or so, they don't wake up if they don't know they're hungry. So you do have to wake them up to feed them.
Right. And then even after the first couple of weeks. So now we're people who are listening, maybe they have brand new babies, but maybe they have older babies or like, you know, I don't know, a month or 2. At what point do you just not wake them up? At what point, if the baby just is like, whoa, it's going on like 5 hours, like at what point do you just let them sleep?
I usually tell them, of course, you should go by what your pediatrician tells you, but sometimes your pediatrician doesn't talk about this with you. Like, I've had a lot of families that tell me, oh, I don't know. Like, sometimes they're like, the baby is 3 months old and they're still waking the baby up at 3, every couple hours during the night, setting alarms. And I'm like, your baby's gaining great. Let him sleep at night if he wants to sleep at night. They're like, oh, the pediatrician never told us that. I just thought we would keep waking up. Because you go 2 months between appointments sometimes. So you don't even see your pediatrician, and your baby changes so much during that time frame that you don't really know what you're supposed to be doing. So usually if your baby is gaining well, like they're back to birth weight, say let them go during the night, but make sure during the day they're feeding pretty frequently. And then if if they still continue to gain well and they want to sleep, several hours during the night, let them do that. That's okay. We look at the weight gain. If your baby is feeding frequently during the day, if you're feeding your baby on demand during the daytime, then they probably will sleep a little bit longer for you at night. And that's okay. You can let them do that. You can let them go, 4 or 5 hours overnight if they're feeding frequently during the day.
Yeah, Jack was like pretty old. Jack was pretty old, like, I don't know, a few months old when like we were going to bed one night and I was like, should we set an alarm? And my husband goes, why? So you can poke him until he wakes up?
Yeah.
Like, because I would just be like, oh my God, we have to set an alarm. We have to check on him. And I was like always staring at him to make sure he was still breathing. And like, like he was like, he's like, all you're going to do if you set this alarm is like, you're going to be awake and then you're going to poke at him until he's awake.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell moms that too. I'm like, well, what happens when you wake him up to eat? Is it like a struggle to get him up? And then he's like, all right, now I'm up. Like, let's do something. Like, if you continue to wake your baby every 3 hours overnight when they don't want to be awakened for that, like, then you're just kind of like, all right, now they're not going to go back to sleep well, probably. Like, it's just, or they're not going to eat well once you do get them up because they're too sleepy, because they want to sleep. So sometimes it's like a little bit of trial and error stuff, but this is where I always say, like, follow your baby's lead. Follow your baby's lead. If you're feeding them on demand during the day, we're not scheduling them. We're feeding them on demand during the day, which is probably going to be frequently. Then you can follow their lead at night and let them sleep. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I know. That's what everybody's waiting for that.
Yeah.
Like, when can I just let them sleep? And then, you know what? Some people listening to this might be like, what are you guys talking about? Like, what do you mean wake the baby up? The baby never sleeps. Yeah. Like, I feel you. Yes. I feel you. Like, so, that's also happens.
Yeah. And it's very baby individualized. Like, it does not, because your baby is a certain age, that doesn't guarantee you're going to get a certain amount of sleep. It just doesn't. It's up to the baby, and babies do different things. And this thing that I found I looked up a lot of different things when it came to like baby sleep, but this kind of cracked me up. It said, most newborns spend more time sleeping than they do awake, although sleeping may happen in small chunks or on an irregular schedule. Managing a newborn's sleep is one of the most challenging tasks of looking after a newborn. Newly born babies are not accustomed to schedules or the rhythms of a typical day. For this reason, they may not sleep at the appropriate times. What the hell is an appropriate time?
What the fuck is an appropriate time?
What is an appropriate time? Like, some of these articles crack me up the way they're written about newborns, because it's like, there is no appropriate time. Like, they're just going to do whatever. Just like how people say, oh, they have their days and nights mixed up. No, they have zero circadian rhythm. Like, they they are just doing their thing. They're just sleeping. You wake them up to eat and then they go back to sleep. But that is very normal for newborns. And that's what's kind of like the point of this podcast today, was to make sure people do, like, this is normal. If your baby is sleepy, that's normal. And that's okay. You might have to work a little harder to wake them and get them to eat, but that doesn't mean that they're never going to wake on their own. This is just their newborn period. You have to work a little bit harder, but that's normal. There's nothing wrong with your baby. They'll wake up eventually, and then you'll be like, oh my God, go to sleep. So, you know, I mean, come on, we all get there.
Yeah. Right. Now that's, yeah.
I mean,
that's a whole other thing. How come my baby won't sleep?
Oh my God, I know it. But it will take a couple of weeks before you get some awake time. And that, I think, also freaks parents out, because I think they don't expect that it's going to be like that. They think that the baby's going to wake up to eat and then be awake for a little bit and then go back to sleep. And it's like, in the beginning, those first couple of weeks, they really don't do that. They just, like, you don't see their eyes that much. And it becomes very like, what the hell do I have this baby for? Like, they're not even interacting with me, you know, like, it's just, They're just like this lump for the first few weeks. And then they start to wake up and you get a little bit more active time. But in the beginning, you really don't. And that's okay. That's normal stuff. And that's when you need to relax and rest and, you know, like, kind of take advantage of that time too, as much as you can.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
All right.
That's about it.
That's great. Thanks, Diane.
Yeah, so sleepy babies, no worries about that. But if you have questions, let us know. And check out the show notes, because we'll put some cool stuff in there for you.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.